I don't have any other creative way to start this show but to say the game. You know what that means. Here we go. This is what Ohio State fans live for the entire year. And we are just a few days away from noon Eastern time, as it always is, except 2006. All right. Welcome into the Buckeyes live show right here at the Voice of College Football. This, of course, special. So dig in, be listening, be ready. These guys will deliver. We got Kevin Noon right next to me, BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Big Me Kickoff podcast as well. Tail of the tape. We can't forget that. Down below, we've got Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports. We've got Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. And, of course, Buckeye Weekly, several editions to catch up on. Folks, get to it and check out Tony's work, of course. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing well.
Doing great.
Got the game faces on, I see. All right, Kevin, we'll start with you. This is just, we can put all kinds of terms and phrases on it, but it is just different, and the intensity is just through the roof.
Yeah, I think people are going to need to slow build up to Saturday, or their heads are going to explode before kickoff. There is a lot of pea and vinegar out there right now between the fan bases. Both teams appear to be taking everything in stride, but I will say this. You go back to 2019 and you talk to Ohio State fans, and there was not a lot of talk about the game. Oh, yeah, that's all well and good. We're all focused on the CFP and everything else. Nobody that I talked to at this point is really that focused on the college football playoff. It's all about this game after being on the wrong end of the last two games. The allegations that are out there about what Michigan may have done to have success in the last two seasons and everything else. It's all going to culminate at 12 o'clock in Ann Arbor on the Fox Broadcasting Company, but it's, there's a lot going on here, and Ohio State is probably as healthy as it has been going into this game, certainly in the last couple of years, and I'm expecting a real doozy in this one. And I'm trying to run up a slow build too. I'll probably be spitting nails by the end of the show, but right now I'm just trying to slow burn.
Tony, Allie and Frazier would be the only thing I could put close to this in regards to there's nothing in team sports like it where the focus of your entire season comes down to 3 hours and everything else is just considered, window dressing.
Yeah, and really the buildup for this game started with the buildup to the Georgia game. After Ohio State lost to Michigan last year, they realized that they didn't go into that game properly, and they didn't want to have that happen against Georgia, and they haven't wanted to have that happen all season long, and they certainly don't want it to happen again in this game. So they've been working on this, as Ryan Day and Urban Meyer have said. You respect the rivalry by working it every day, and that's not new at Ohio State. The results the last couple of years have been sort of new, I guess you would say, but the focus on this, and as Kevin said, like the lack of talk about the playoffs at this point, it's just all about this, and whatever happens after this happens. But right now, this is the most important thing, I think, for both programs, and for a number of different reasons. And whether or not this is the biggest Michigan-Ohio State game ever, we'll probably talk about later in the show. But I think for as many reasons on the field, there is just many reasons off the field why this thing is gigantic.
Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I said this yesterday on Spectrum, and, Woody and Bo, people think, oh, they hated each other and this, that, the other. Well, Bo actually worked for Woody at Ohio State, and then he tried to leave to go to Miami and become the head coach there. And Woody was like, you don't want to do that. You want to stay here and help us win here at Ohio State. And you could be the next coach at Ohio State. Well, then he goes on and becomes the head coach at Michigan. And they went against each other for 10 years. And there was this grudging respect between them. If Bo Schembechler was raising money for the Children's Hospital at the University of Michigan, Woody Hayes was number one on the guest list to be there for the big fundraising, thing, whatever. They, it was this grudging respect that the two had for each other, an underlying friendship. None of that exists today because Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day never really worked together, and they can't even say each other's names. And one side stands accused of trying to spy on the other side, as well as every other opponent it's had, seemingly for 3 years, to steal food right out of their mouths, basically. And so it is deeply, deeply personal this time. And it hadn't been like that in a long time. So this one means more, I think, is what I would say. And the stakes couldn't be any higher, because this last year, the 14 playoff, starting next year, you can lose this game and still get in to the playoff. You'll just have to play a opening round game as opposed to having the first round bye, perhaps. Although you could actually lose this game, go on and beat the team the following week and get the first round bye. So it's kind of crazy the way that this is all shaking out. But this is the last year. It means what it does. And in my way of thinking, they've come close. They had 21 million people watch the 2016 game, which was 11-0 versus 11-0. Maybe they can catch that Florida State Notre Dame game from 1993 or 94 that had 22 million people, the most watched regular season game in modern, college football history. We could have that with Fox on Saturday.
Steve, just real quick, when you say one team spying, you need to clarify that you're talking about Michigan, because Michigan fans might think you're talking about Ohio State doing that spying.
Yes,
so
to clarify, that was Michigan that did the spying.
Right.
The evidence seems to be mountains and overwhelming, to where they've fired an assistant coach because he impeded the investigation. Must have been something in there that he didn't like, that he didn't want people to know about. So, this one's real. Ohio State, for all those years, Ohio State rubbed Michigan's nose in it. The last 2 years, Michigan has rubbed Ohio State's nose in it. And now Michigan stands accused of going to great lengths to find a way to beat Ohio State once again. And if that's not enough for Ohio State to finally put up or shut up, then I don't know what would ever be enough for Ohio State to try and win this game.
I will say these two coaches obviously don't like each other. Even Brady Hoke and Urban Meyer attended a barbecue together, and we're seen having a meal together. Like I don't think you'll see Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh having a meal together anytime soon for any reason.
Yeah, that was at the Sound Mind, Sound Body football camp up there. I was there for it, and I'll tell you, that barbecue was good, by the way. It was
tasty barbecue.
It was very good barbecue, but no, I don't think that that these two coaches are going to spend a lot of time together, and they're not going to on the field on Saturday, because let's not forget, Jim Harbaugh is not going to be on the sideline with the team. I mean, let's not forget about that, which, speaks volumes. I mean, I don't know why they would do that to an innocent program that's just done nothing. We're just sitting here minding our own business. But, sure, we're okay.
Hey, you bring up Brady Hoke. His one enduring contribution is great barbecue. It's barbecue.
I'm guessing Kevin remembers nothing else about that event except the barbecue was
barbecue.
Top
no,
notch.
There were way too many kids at that camp. I mean, it Sound Mind, Sound Body is a great event, and it's open up to like everybody, but there are just too many kids there to be able to go there and scout anybody. It was a lot.
I appreciate great barbecue, but you appreciate great barbecue. I haven't
had a chance to do anything with the smoker recently. Maybe after this week, and then potentially next week, if Ohio State wins and goes to Indianapolis, maybe I can maybe do a brisket or something.
Kevin, let's stay with you. We'll go with this round of questioning. Because of everything that you guys just mentioned, there is a thought out there that Ohio State has more pressure on it. Number one, they've lost 2 consecutive games. Number two, Ryan Day is coaching against an interim coach. And he personally would lose 3 consecutive games beyond all the 11-0 championship on the line, all the typical and the pride and the bragging rights. But just the situation that has been brought on by Michigan, let's face it, has put more pressure on Ryan Day and Ohio State.
I say there's a lot of pressure on Michigan too. And I said this on Sirius XM last night. Look at it this way. Michigan has 44 seniors. The loser of this game is going potentially to the Orange Bowl to play Louisville. May as well call it the opt-out bowl. And that team is going to scatter into the wind. And if you do believe that Michigan is going to be facing a lot of NC2A punishments coming down the line, and they're doing this to, they're kicking the can down the road in order to, this is a special team. We think we can win a national championship. Damn the consequences. We'll deal with those later. If you're going through all of this and you lose the game and you go to the opt-out bowl and you lose to Louisville because half your team is taken off because they don't care about that game, and if you're not in the CFP, you're going to have a lot of opt-outs. So there's pressure on Michigan too, and that's not to diminish the point that Ohio State has a ton of pressure. Ryan Day personally has a lot of pressure. That's all there too. But I certainly have heard the narrative that all the pressure is on Ohio State, and that is just not true.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I agree with Kevin. I mean, I think, Michigan needs to win this year because the future is very uncertain for the University of Michigan football program. I think the NCAA is going to throw the book at them. They're going to vacate wins, and I think that is entirely possible that they could face a postseason ban in 2024 because of what has happened in the past. And if and when that comes down, there could be a number of players that go into the transfer portal. I think it is entirely possible that the university president, the athletic director, and Coach Jim Harbaugh could all lose their jobs as a result of this scandal. And, again, I don't think they embrace this the proper way. I think that, and I don't know what the proper way would have been for them to salvage a chance to win the championship this year. I don't know. I guess their militants in questioning the Big Ten's purview to do anything in the interim while you await the long-term NCAA process is probably the most just head-scratching thing that you're above the Big Ten to where you can do this to the 13 other Big Ten schools and expect there to be no repercussions. I mean, I just don't know how what kind of world view you have to think that you're above everybody else to get away with something so egregious, so obvious. It's as obvious as the nose on your face. And they just thought, oh, well, we're Michigan. We're number 2 in the polls. They shouldn't do anything to us. Well, in a sense, they really didn't. They just took the head coach away for these 3 games. If they somehow win this week, he's back in for the championship game next week against Iowa and back in for the playoff. So, what's really hurt them this year? Nothing. It's been a minor slap on the wrist. They're still eligible. They should thank their lucky stars that they were still eligible. So I think the NCAA is going to throw the book at them. And, that the mountains of evidence are there. And so I agree with Kevin. This is the year they need to win it all, create those memories, show that Michigan is capable of doing this. And then when Matt Campbell or whoever comes in to salvage this disaster in 2024, hopefully by 2025, they can have a winning team back on the field, because I think they're in for a rude awakening, I think, after the first of the year.
I'm seeing the comments from Mike and Tice about vacate wins for what? You guys are delusional. You've got Michigan.
Don't forget soft.
Well, Michigan has 3 head coaches this year who have been suspended. So, if you want to count the 2 suspensions for Jim Harbaugh, like 3 times they've had head coaches suspended. It could be because Sharon Moore has been suspended. Jim Harbaugh's been suspended twice. And let's not forget, Michigan has agreed with the last suspension, or else they would have stuck to their temporary restraining order. They would have continued to go through the injunction. So they agreed with this one. They imposed the first one. They have agreed with the second one, or else they would have done something to stop it. So this is something real has happened here, because Michigan has, again, imposed their own 3-game suspension, trying to keep a 4-game suspension from happening. There's still going to be a suspension from that first situation carried on to next year, because the NCAA is not going to take your 3 games when they wanted 4. And then there's more coming from this. So there's obviously a ton of pressure on both programs, both teams, both head coaches. Sharon Moore, there's a ton of pressure on him. You don't want to lose this game and then be seen as the reason why, because you are in control of the game and then you are the reason that they lost. You don't want that. Obviously, Ryan Day doesn't want to lose 3 in a row. Ohio State doesn't want to miss the playoffs. Michigan doesn't want to miss the playoffs. Pressure for this game is immense. I also do think there's a chance if Michigan loses this one, they will opt out themselves. They will self-impose a bowl ban to try to get back into the postseason a year earlier. And once again say, yeah, we've realized something bad has happened here. They usually do it with they drag their feet on it, but eventually they come around when they see the punishment coming down. So like, yeah, we agree. There should be some more punishment here. So I wouldn't be shocked. And that's another reason why it's big for Michigan to win this and to continue to move on and hopefully get what they are shooting for. And some would say selling their soul for at this point. But the denial from the Michigan side is incredible for Michigan fans. When you have head coaches suspended, your head coach is currently serving a suspension. Something real is happening here. There is a lot going on. And whether you disagree with the rules or not, that's pointless. That means nothing. You can disagree with them all you want. They're right there. And they clearly have not been followed to the point that your head coach has been now suspended for half of the regular season. And the reason we've never seen that before is because generally a school would fire a coach for this level of needing to be suspended. You see, I saw Bruce Feldman reporting on Saturday that there's a possibility that Harbaugh would be suspended for the entire 2024 season. The reason that has never happened before is because a coach would be fired for that. And Michigan has not chosen to act on any of this other than when they have to, and trying to appease the NCAA. I don't think they'll have to appease the NCAA in terms of their head coach, because I would expect Jim Harbaugh to eventually leave. And I've thought this was his last season since the first NCAA infraction when he wouldn't accept the 4-game suspension.
Just really quick too, and I don't want to lump all Michigan fans together, and unfortunately we see a lot of them like on social media, the vocal ones, that dude from the Young Turks who's insane. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going there, but there's this Eric Cartman debate club situation going on where the loudest voice in the room is the one that's going to win, and we hear constantly, well, it's a stupid rule. Well, it's still a rule. I think paying taxes is stupid. Still got to pay them. I mean, there's a lot of that going on. Well, there's no real advantage. Well, if you go to the article from The Athletic, it disagrees with you. Just because potentially Scott Loeffler said, "Oh, it wasn't that big of a deal," and we don't know that. I'm just saying it was an opponent of theirs that they played earlier in the year. Oh, they could have had we could have had all of their plays and it wouldn't have mattered. Well, yeah, when you're talking about a group of 5 team against a top end Power 5 team, that's just generally what's going to happen, unless we're talking about Appalachian State and there's a lot going back there. But
Toledo, yeah.
So you sit there and it's just no, we're just going to be louder, and we're just going to keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, and they keep getting fed the same line of shit from people. And I'm sorry but it is. They keep getting fed the same line, and they just parrot it. They parrot it over and over and over and over again. And people are like, well, Ohio State would do the same thing. Well, Ohio State is no stranger to running afoul of NC2A rules. And honestly, Ohio State fans have more history fighting with each other than they do with everybody else. That's just generally how it works. So I just still don't know where we are in the 5 stages of grief. I think we just keep resetting it. I mean, because we've been in anger for a long time.
We've got a large contingent of Michigan fans on our channel. Some of them make their way to the Ohio State show, and most of them are above board and recognizing something serious and that it should be dealt with. And certainly there's going to be an amount of offense to any fan base to try to minimize that as much as possible. And that's human nature, but to completely ignore it or actually turn it around to be this attack that's unwarranted and malicious by the other Big Ten schools in the NCAA is a bit ridiculous. All right. And one other note, Kevin had pointed us toward the future. And of course, we will have plenty of time to go through the postmortem. But I see Ohio State's got the second ranked recruiting class in the nation for 2024 and should hold in the top 4, you would think. Michigan doesn't seem to have capitalized on this 2-year run. They're at 15. That's pretty much where they are. I don't know if this investigation has had any kind of adverse effects on their recruiting class, but that's where that lands. And I know the transfer portal has changed much of how important that final high school recruiting ranking is. And Michigan's been more active and effective in their transfer portal than Ohio State, but still the Buckeyes continue to be a monster on the recruiting trail.
Just wait until 2025 quarterback Bryce Underwood from the state of Michigan commits to LSU. I promise you that's happening. It's a done deal. And the amount of anger and everything that's going to come out there is going to be insane because Bryce Underwood is not going to Michigan. Michigan's recruiting, it's a situation of they don't recruit. I mean, okay, you can still have a great class and not recruit head-to-head with Ohio State on a lot of kids. Michigan has tried to move into the state of Ohio and recruit some, but it's still not to the point of where Lloyd Carr was doing. When Lloyd Carr had this rivalry completely tilted in his direction, he could come into Ohio and short of a legacy kid could at least create a level of indecision that would go down until the final moment, until the kid was ready to decide. You know, Michigan is the king of recruiting Connecticut. I mean, is the king of recruiting Massachusetts. Boston College should be pissed off about the amount that they recruit up there in that area. But, you know, Michigan is not necessarily getting involved with the main kids. And, I mean, yes, to be a top 15 team recruiting is still pretty nice. I mean, they still get some kids. There's some kids in the last couple of classes that I'm like, that's a really good, looking football player. I think that's going to be a huge get for them. But I don't know if I'm going to say, at least in 24, I don't think it's going to have a major impact on recruiting, especially because National Signing Day is less than a month away and the NC2A can't do anything in that amount of time. So there's not really going to be anything there that I think that's going to sway any kids' decisions at this point. Hell, sign with them. You can go in the portal. If the program gets nuked, you can just jump in the portal and leave. So it doesn't really matter, but it could have some impacts in 25 and 26, but the Bryce Underwood decision had been made a long time ago.
Yakov, Michigan will vacate the 21, 22, and 23 seasons. Thank you for that, Yakov.
I do wonder about that in terms of if the NCAA does have all of the proof that they need, do they just get vacated for the games that they spied for, or do they vacate the non-conference games as well? Like you're not sending somebody to spy against Bowling Green. You're not sending somebody to spy against East Carolina or Hawaii, although maybe you had people wanting to go spy against Hawaii. But do they still get those wins, or because this operation is going on during these games, like because it exists, are all of those games vacated? I don't know.
I mean, that's a good point. If you have actual receipts that which ones were directly impacted, or is it just kind of more of a blanket thing of, this is under the administration of cheating, so we're just going to wipe all of them out in just one fell swoop. But the good news is Michigan will get the opportunity sometime down the line to get win number 1,000 again. So, you know, they can save all of those little cutouts and everything else and the press releases. You just have to cross off the names and the dates and things like that. But, you know, there's always a silver lining to every dark storm.
They'll get a chance to win number 1,000 twice.
Yes. Yes.
I did see in some interview Blake Corum talking about how the 1,000 wins, they can't take that away. And I was like, they might be able to.
Pretty sure they're gonna.
It's happening.
Can I deal with the Biggs Mike's comment here? What will OSU fans say about Ryan Day if he loses again to Michigan? I know the fans last year were calling for his job. Fans are always calling for jobs. They're calling for a job for a missed third down. So obviously they're going to call for Ryan Day's job after a second loss to Michigan last year, and they will certainly call for his job again if he loses this week. That is a given. That's what fans do. That's what media does. We call for jobs. But Ohio State is the underdog in this game on the road against the number 2 team in the nation. It's a game technically, mathematically, you should lose. So I don't think you get fired for something that should happen. But and again, as I've said many times, John Cooper didn't get fired for losing to Michigan. He got fired for losing the program. And then all of those losses to Michigan never helped. And so if they had better bowl performances and better just not flaming out the way they did, I think he would have withstood the losses in 1999 and 2000, especially after the 1998 season being as good as it was. But that team, once 99, 2000, things were dropping off of a cliff and they needed to make a change. And so 3 losses for Ryan Day is just go back to work the day after. You go back to work on November 26th, and you get back at it. And that's it.
I've said the Dr. Pepper commercials are patterned after the people at Texas A&M, right down to the maroon, you know, just the way that they overreact to everything and just the way they are. But if Ohio State gets stopped for no gain on the first play of the game, that also applies to Ohio State fans. So they throw the towel in at the first sign of weakness or first mistake or whatever. They go off the deep end. And, I just watched a videotape, Woody Hayes, fans are fickle, that's what Woody Hayes always liked to say. And Ryan Day's 56-6 and brings in great players. And, you don't want to lose to Michigan 3 times in a row. That would not be good, but I don't think he's going anywhere if that were to happen. I mean, you never want to stop and think about, what would happen if they did lose this game? They'd be 11-1, and unless some other teams all lost, Texas, Oregon, Alabama, Florida State, Washington, whoever, like 4 of those 5 teams lost, you're not going to backdoor your way back into the playoff again this year like you did last year. So you're probably going to get relegated to the Orange Bowl to play Louisville, and half the team isn't going to play because they want to preserve their draft status. So we've covered what will happen if they don't win, which, you don't want to even conjure that thought. It's time for Ohio State to get back to Indianapolis. It's time for Ohio State to win the Big Ten again. It's time for Ohio State to beat Michigan. And so, no, I don't think they'd fire Ryan Day. No, none of what will happen if they lose to Michigan is the least bit desirable. But, he's your coach and he's your guy. And I don't think that's going to change regardless of this. I mean, you do have a new president coming in, Ted Carter, in January, a new athletic director coming in probably in March or April to work alongside Gene Smith for a few months. So, just as I've said with the basketball coach, Chris Holtman, some of the insulation will be gone for Ryan Day. But again, when you're in the top 5 in every poll for years and years and years and years, and you're going into an era now with a 12-team playoff, and you figure to be in it 10 or 11 times every 12 years, why would you rock this boat and try and start over and hope that it'll be better than what you've already got.
Because there is a second part to the firing. You have to then hire someone. So it's not just to get rid of him. There has to be a capable, suitable, better replacement. Steve Dace and I went back and forth about that. He stated that if Ohio State's really as serious about football as he believes that they are, if Ryan Day loses this game, they're going to fire him. And I said, I do not see that in any such way happening, nor should it happen. He's winning 11 games a year.
Well, so why wasn't Jim Harbaugh fired for losing?
I responded in that same way.
5 straight or whatever, and declining to play another. Like, is it because Michigan isn't as serious? And that's been a claim that some Michigan fans have said that, that's why Ohio State takes this stuff too seriously. It's just football. It stops being just football. Once you start winning, then it's life or death. And this is why we're better than you. But there were people that wanted Jim Harbaugh gone and probably Steve himself. I do remember Steve not even watching the 2021 or 2021 game.
He did want him gone.
Yeah, because he knew it was going to be bad. And so that was the situation with Jim Harbaugh then. And something changed. And, for a couple of years, I had said leading up to that 2021 season, this was not, Jim Harbaugh had stopped having fun. This was a miserable dude coaching his team and had a miserable attitude. Just talking to him, seeing interviews, just staring off into space. And then the team kind of stared off into space too. But then something changed. 2021, he's more energized. And you can probably go back and just look at the video from one year to the next. Maybe ignore the 2020 stuff because that was COVID and everybody was crazy. But this is a more energized guy than he had been for a couple of years. And I don't know if it's which is the chicken or the egg. Was it the energy that brought the wins, or was it the wins that brought the energy? And I'm not even going to discuss how those wins came to be. It's just this is a different Jim Harbaugh right now.
David Greenshield, thank you so much for the contribution. We know David is going to be amped up on Saturday. Best game in the series. David's best are 1987 and 2006. Gotta love the Earl headbands. Yes, 23-20. Yes, that was quite the game, and of course sending off Earl in style.
That 87 game was one of my first Ohio State Michigan memories. Did Chris Spielman have 2 interceptions in that one? Or is that the Texas
I think that's the Cotton Bowl game, right?
Okay.
I don't think he had it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he had 2 interceptions in that game. Neither one of those teams in 87 was very good, obviously, the way it panned out. But I was at that game, and it was very cold that day. It was probably about 30 degrees. And my friend Joe and I, we were in our second year, sophomores at Ohio State, and we went to senior tackle at the Woody Hayes Center. Was brand new in 1987. I think it was the first or second year that they had practiced inside that indoor facility. When they had to go inside, they would go over to the French Field House, which was a little farther away from the Biggs facility, which is what was their practice facility there. And so they built this nice indoor thing, and they had the senior tackle there. I was there. Chris Spielman hit the dummy for the last time and all those things. And then we hopped in the car, and it was blowing snow all the way to Ann Arbor. And we parked our car, and we went through the parking lot looking for tickets. And this really nice guy from Michigan was there with his family. He's probably in his 60s. And said, "Here, have a hot dog, have a pop, whatever." Saw Ohio State students, whatever. And said, "Yeah, we're looking for tickets." He goes, "Well, I got extra tickets." And I go, "Well, how much do you want for them?" "Well, it says $17 right here." And my buddy and I each pulled out a 20 and said, "Keep the change." It was like we were expecting to pay top dollar, and got in for face value. We were on the 30-yard line. And Ohio State, we didn't expect Ohio State was going to win, but we wanted to be there, for Earl's last stand. And, they won the game. And yeah, that was a great memory. That's the first time I went to Michigan Stadium. And if you've never been there to see it for the first time, it's a little bit jarring. It's different, much different than Ohio Stadium. I'll say that. I think the whole state of Michigan's a bit jarring, to be honest with you. It just seems like a dark, dire, cold place. Of course, I'm only there in the wintertime for Michigan football. And, every time you go to Michigan State, seems like the weather is pretty adverse. I don't think I've ever been to Michigan State on a sunny 70-degree day, but maybe if we get a September game up there one year, that would be great. But then I go up for Michigan football or Michigan basketball and Michigan State basketball. There's usually a foot of snow on the ground as well. So that kind of adds to it as well. But compared to Ohio, I don't know. It just seems like it's Canada. I don't know. Bad Canada, but since it's Michigan, but I don't know. That's just my impression of being there. This will be the 30. I think I've been to 29 of the last 30 Michigan games. The only one I missed was in 2001. My wife was pregnant. My daughter, her 22nd birthday will be on Monday. Sometimes it's the day of the game. Sometimes it's Thanksgiving. Sometimes it's Black Friday. This time it's 2 days after the game, but that's the one I missed in 2001, the breakthrough with Jim Tressel. And I watched that on television in my basement and wrote the story for the game from my basement with the help from our people that were on the site that day. So a lot of memories of Michigan, and 87, that one took the cake for sure.
Well, I made this similar comment to somebody this week that was commenting to the channel that said something like, and I don't know where this person was writing from, maybe, South Florida or something, who said, where does it matter where this game is? It's always cold up there anyway. And I said, and my recollection is it seems like every game that's in Columbus, it seems like it's about 55 or 60 degrees, and every game in Ann Arbor, like it's on the brink of, snowfall and ice and cold. It just, that's not the exact truth, but it just seems that way.
I will say I've been to some lakes in Michigan in the summer. The weather is fine there in the right places. It's a lovely state. But Steve is right. When we go to Michigan State, the campus is beautiful, and the leaves have changed their colors. But then after the game, it's all like ice and snow. I don't know. Like the winter happens at night, and it gets cold there. We've been there when in October, and like there's a layer of ice on the field. There's snow covering the pool outside of the stadium, and then of course Michigan. Anytime we're driving back from there, it feels like we're driving through blinding air, just blowing snow back on 23, dealing with construction and wind and snow and things like that. But it's going to be another one, the low 30s around game time. And I think it's dry at this point. We know how much Ohio State does not like the snow. We've heard about that from Michigan fans for a couple of years now. So I don't know what the latest weather is, but I'll be in the press box, so I don't care.
Nerfed Hacks is telling us, as we were discussing a few minutes ago, about the changing landscape in college football starting next season. Losing to Michigan won't matter. So why would they fire Ryan Day? Silly ops, say silly things. Postseason records matter moving forward.
They would fire him because he was the head coach overseeing a program that's going to get hit with major infractions. That's why you fire him.
They're talking about Ryan Day.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I had to step away to yell at animals and
Although
everything else.
There's a segment of the Michigan fans that would say you are absolutely correct. He has overseen.
Well, and that was the thing. I went to the lowest of hanging fruit. So I apologize to the super chatter. I don't. I will yield my time. I don't have anything to say on the other side of things.
Well, we will eventually need to get to some matchups on the field here. But before we do that real quick, it's kind of connected to the pressure narrative would be the psyche, especially with Ohio State, Steve. What do you think the psyche? So I liken this, not exactly, of course, but in a sense, going into the Georgia game after what could be termed a demoralizing defeat against Michigan, even 3 weeks later, I'm thinking, what is this team going to be? I know what Georgia is. I'm confident of how they're going to show up, but which Ohio State team's going to show up? And if they show up the way they're capable of, I was expecting an excellent game. And so they delivered that. But I thought if they don't show up with their heads screwed on straight, then they're going to get blown out of the stadium. So what are your thoughts about what the psyche of this group could be after 2 consecutive losses?
Yeah, I think that they have a great deal of resolve, and I think that their coaches have drummed it into them that anything less than a win is not acceptable. And I think they're going to go up there and be very focused, very businesslike, and play their best football. What we've seen as a team defensively, it's not a fluke anymore. This is 11 games that they have played just outstanding football against some pretty good offenses. Now, we could say Michigan State, Minnesota the last few weeks, Rutgers, Wisconsin, some of these teams, don't have a whole lot going for them offensively. But, Michigan and Ohio State, I think they have, 7 common opponents this year with the 5 other teams in the division, and they both played Minnesota and Purdue. And Michigan's margin of victory in those games is 28. Ohio State's margin of victory in those 7 games is 24. So it's pretty comparable. And there were a couple blowouts that skew the margin there a little bit. Penn State is a barometer. Ohio State beat them 20-12, and Michigan beat them 24-15. So everything seems to be, as comparable as it almost could possibly be. Michigan's giving up 9.0 points. Ohio State's giving up 9.3. So everything seems to be just dead even when you look at any way you want to qualify this. And I think Ohio State has that incentive and has that motivation, given what's happened, double-digit losses the last 2 times they played them. And yet the players can put the film on and see what Maryland, just making routine plays. They didn't have to stand on their head to score 24 points. And in fact, had Maryland not self-destructed and turned the ball over for a touchdown on its own 5-yard line and, had a safety, or actually 2 safeties, and done some stupid things, maybe Maryland wins that game. Penn State, we covered it in the show that week. Penn State and James Franklin had 3 galactically stupid strategic decisions in that game. Now, Drew Aller could have stood out there all day. He wasn't going to find his receivers, but, Penn State was in that game, all the way down to 150 remaining when Franklin went for 2 and didn't get it. But so this is not an invincible Michigan team. It's a very good Michigan team. There's nothing for Ohio State to be scared of. And I really like Denzel Burke yesterday said, we're going to do this for Ohio. We're going to do this because we need to do this. We have to do this. There is no alternative. We have to go up there and win this game. And I think and he's locked in. I mean, you could see in his eye that he's not, ordinarily he's happy-go-lucky Denzel Burke. He wasn't bullshitting around yesterday. He was ready to go. And, Tommy Eichenberg's ready to go. Kate Stover's ready to go. Marvin Harrison's ready to go. So I'll take my chances with these guys this week this is their vision quest. This is the one they've got to win. To ensure their legacy, and they're too good not to go away with at least 1 win over Michigan.
The Denzel Burke thing, I think one of the questions was, what concerns you most about the Michigan offense? And his answer was nothing. There's something to that effect. And then he went on to talk about the offense and the Ohio State defense. He was definitely very serious in terms of the scoring margins, and margins are what they are. But since Connor Stallions was suspended, and since teams were aware of Michigan's scheme to cheat the game, there have been 4 common opponents. Ohio State's margin of victory total in those 4 games is 97. Michigan's is 93. So just a little bit of information there. The Michigan State, Purdue, Penn State, Maryland, those 4 games, the 4 common opponents since the Stallions thing came about, and but none of that means anything right now. It doesn't mean anything on Saturday. Michigan nearly lost to Illinois the week before the Ohio State game last year. Didn't mean anything. Michigan gets a very tough game at Maryland this week. It may not mean anything. I think it did give Ohio State some a good look at what a capable quarterback can do against this Michigan defense. As long as you don't turn it over, and Talia Tagovailoa turned it over 3 times in that game, including a fumble that was returned for a touchdown. So if you just hold on to the football, I think if Kyle McCord gets protection, there's going to be some opportunities to go downfield. I'm also not expecting Michigan to play Maryland the way they played, the way they will play. I don't expect them to play Ohio State the way they played Maryland. I expect them to keep some safeties up top, try to limit the big plays, and maybe force Ohio State to just be patient and run for 6 yards, throw for 8 yards, because I don't think there are some defensive coordinators that still don't think Ohio State is patient enough to do that. And it's going to be up to Ryan Day to stay that patient.
Ohio State did not have Trevion Henderson last year in the game. Michigan didn't have Blake Corum. So, we can look back there. But I think the biggest thing that hurt Ohio State last year is when you are settling for 3 versus 7. And Ohio State was 3 of 3 in field goals last year. And you can't do that. And you can't stop scoring. Ohio State really did not put up any points in the second half of that game, and then got into a position where it had to sell out on defense, and eventually the defense broke. So Ohio State just has to maintain a level of consistency. If Ohio State can get up, it has to keep the pressure on Michigan for the entire 4 quarters. Michigan is not an explosive offense. I mean, that's not to say that Michigan hasn't put up a lot of points and everything else, but they are not a team that does it with home runs. They do a lot more, singles out there and do a very good job at it. But, I will be interested to see how Ohio State's interior offensive line holds up against the Michigan defensive tackles. I think that's something that's going to be very important there. But Ohio State's red zone struggles that have been a recurring theme this year cannot be part of this game. Ohio State has to put up 7 when it has the opportunity. And I understand Michigan for much of the season did not have an end goal against it. But, Ohio State is not the opponent that Michigan has played in the previous 11 weeks. And Ohio State has to do a better job in those and goal situations than it has done in 95% of this season.
Trevion Henderson is a different back than we saw fail in a short yardage key situation at Michigan 2 years ago. Not his fault. Offensive line, of course, not getting the push, but Ohio State being a little bit, maybe not stubborn, but getting away from what they do best in a couple situations 2 years ago and thinking that they could show themselves to be tougher and ram it ahead. But man, Trevion Henderson to me is just, for as talented and as great a season as he had in 2021, he was just, riding creases and seams and exploding through them basically and showing off speed and agility, versus now he's a much more determined, focused, running with anger kind of running back.
I think he's also more patient. You've seen him not just running straight into the line, but he's looking for the hole and he's reading things. And then he's got the explosion to get through there and make guys just not even get into the picture, but he's also making guys miss. And that's the difference between him and anybody else in the Ohio State backfield, is he can get to the hole because the holes aren't staying open for long. And Chip Trayanum can only get there so quickly. I do think maybe now they are able to play Dallin Hayden and not lose a red shirt. Ryan Day clarified that after the game on Saturday, saying that the postseason games don't count for the red shirt situation. So you could see him playing the rest of the way out. I will be interested to see if he is the number 2 running back. I don't think he will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if he eventually becomes the number 2 back at some point this season. But yeah, the thing that they're getting from Henderson has been fantastic. He's averaging over 100 yards rushing a game when he's actually out there. I think Notre Dame rushed for 100, and of course has rushed for 100 or so in the last 3 games. And I don't know that there's going to be much success between the tackles. I think you're going to have to go outside the tackles against Michigan. But Penn State rushed for like 140, 150 yards on them, and they have no passing game. So I think Penn State showed that you can move the ball between the tackles and on the ground, and we'll see if Ohio State can do that. I'll believe that part when I see it, but it also only does take like one big hit in between the tackles to make everything else look good.
These recent weeks with Michigan, they looked like the most complete team in football. Maybe not the best, Georgia, but looked like the most complete team against mediocre Big Ten teams. And now here in recent weeks, and most notably against Maryland, we see J.J. McCarthy during this Harbaugh suspension, his QBR, he's been inconsistent. He made a bad mistake in the red zone right before half against Maryland. And of course, the Maryland defensive backs, and I know Roman Wilson caught a ball and then he was on the sideline the rest of the game, but those Maryland cornerbacks locked down on those Michigan receivers. For one thing, they contested every throw practically. And then, of course, Michigan having issues at the tackle position, especially on the right side, and mixing and mashing and moving guys around. Ladarius Henderson's out. Miles Hinton left the game last week. So they're starting to show some cracks that they did not earlier.
Yeah, I'll just say it was a month ago yesterday was J.J. McCarthy's last touchdown pass.
Wow.
And he was said on Monday at the press conference, hopefully he's just saving all of that up for Ohio State, which would be a fantastic way for him to get out of that slump. But not throwing a single pass in the second half against Penn State will obviously limit your opportunities. But throwing that interception at the end of the first half in the end zone against Maryland was bad. The pass he threw before that, which could have been intercepted by 2 different guys. One guy knocked it down. That was even worse. That was a scramble, throw back across your body into the end zone, and that should have been intercepted. And then the very next pass he throws gets intercepted because he didn't see the linebacker in front of the receiver. So he does need to step it up. He's a little banged up. Whether or not he will be healthy enough, obviously he's going to play. He needs to be able to run the ball in this one and keep plays alive. But while keeping plays alive, he can't make mistakes in terms of throwing the ball back across the middle. He killed Ohio State last year with the big plays, but he only completed 12 of 24 passes. And it was the big plays, the bad coverage, the Jim Knowles aggressive defense last year, and that was a less talented secondary for Ohio State a year ago as well. And Michigan took advantage of all of it at exactly the right time. And this year, Ohio State feels much better about their defensive chances, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm watching that game last week. It's 23-3. And you're thinking, wow, this Michigan team's amazing. And that was the first 20 minutes, but the last 40 minutes left, they left a lot of football out there in that last 40 minutes. And so allowed Maryland, to get as close as 5 on a couple of occasions. And they even had the ball down 5, I think. And he threw Tagovailoa threw a pick. Otherwise, they could have driven it down and taken the lead. And that's just, amazing when you think about it in the fourth quarter to be in that position. But, this game, I think both teams are going to play their best football. And I think that there is a factor that says, the week before that game that you do sometimes get caught look ahead, although Ohio State really didn't with either of these last 2 games against Michigan State. They were only ahead of Maryland 13-0 or Minnesota 13-0. And they did need to come out of the locker room with the spark, and Henderson provided that. And then Sawyer had the forced fumble, and they scored another touchdown, 2 touchdowns in the first 90 seconds of the second half. And now you could look ahead to Michigan. It was it was a done deal at that moment. And yet, I don't think Minnesota was going to generate much of anything. The Ohio State defense has come within 2 50-yard field goals of shutting out its last two opponents. And, I think was that 3 games this year where they've only given up 3 points. So, they're legitimate in my opinion. They are really playing great football. And obviously it helps if Mike Hall can play this week and help stop the run up front against Michigan. But to me, I think Ohio State finally, after a couple of years, has a team that's ready to counter what Michigan has for it up front.
And we see a Jim Knowles defense. I mean, at least a Jim Knowles play caller on defense, of where he's not gambling as much, at least in terms of Ohio State not giving up the big plays. The only 40-yard play was the crazy play against Rutgers, the fumble Ruski double hike, whatever situation. It really hurt Ohio State last year in the biggest situations of where they, had momentum on their side and felt like they were going to get the opponent off the field. And then you go cover 0 and it all falls apart at that point. So I think that as long as Ohio State stays true to who it's been in the previous 11 games, and I'm not going to apologize by saying Michigan is significantly better than anybody that Ohio State's played. So, if you're coming out and expecting Ohio State to hold Michigan to 3, you're probably going to be disappointed. There's going to be a lot of swings in this game. There's going to be a lot of times where everybody's cheering and a lot of times where everybody's ready to call for everybody's head. But I like Ohio State if it does not get away from what it is in terms of in its defensive structure and things of that nature.
We haven't talked a whole lot of Kyle McCord. In my eyes, he's reasonably progressed, meaning, he's not a different player than he was 10 weeks ago and become, the reincarnation of CJ Stroud or anything like that. But he has taken steps to become a better quarterback, a more fluid, confident, more decisive quarterback. And he's reached this game in what is a reasonable manner in regards to, really taking the position and progressing each week, in my view.
Yeah, I would agree with you. At halftime, we had people wanting to enter the transfer portal, looking for anybody else to play quarterback because they got it down the red zone and settled for field goals 3 times. And I think on each one of those, there were 2 incompletions in each one of those series that led them to have to kick field goals. And he missed some receivers. There's no 2 ways about it. Now, in some other cases, guys were covered. I give Minnesota credit. Their defense really is not that bad. So he can play better, but he ended up over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and completed 2/3 of his passes, just had another Kyle McCord day. And he's 101 yards from becoming the 7th different quarterback to go over 3,000 yards in a season at Ohio State. It'll be the 8th time it's happened. CJ Stroud did it both of his years as the starter. So it'll be the 3rd year in a row that they'll have a 3,000-yard passer. They didn't have one, obviously, in 2020 with Fields because of the COVID year. But he's fine. I don't think they lose this game if they lose it because of Kyle McCord. And they may not win it if they win it because of Kyle McCord. They may win it because of great running game and great defense. And, Marvin Harrison made 1 great play in the red zone or something like that. And that's it. I'm picking Ohio State to win the game 20-17. I just think that, we're in for, one of these old time, head smashing type games, and the ball could be moved between the 20s, but then it comes down to what'd you do for me in the red zone. And I just think that there's going to be some settling for field goals and different things like that, as opposed to a lot of touchdowns in this game.
I'll just throw out real quick. In November, 3 games in November, Kyle McCord leads all Big Ten in pass efficiency, 171 rating. J.J. McCarthy is 6th in Big Ten passing efficiency in November at 126. Kyle McCord, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception in November. JJ McCarthy, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception in November. At the very least, there is going to be question about the Big Ten quarterback of the year. For the longest time, that was just going to be JJ McCarthy. I think the winner of this game was probably going to be the winner of that award. And if you can keep Kyle McCord upright, I think he's going to beat Michigan. If you can't, then you've got some issues. And JJ McCarthy just needs to, when he is trying to make a play, he has to make a good play rather than bad play. If he makes more good plays and makes no bad plays, then I think Michigan wins.
Yes.
And they probably want to keep Kyle McCord in the 25 to 28 pass attempt range, I would think. That sounds like the formula.
If they're only throwing the ball 25 to 28 times, that tells me they're running the ball or they're going 3 and out. So I guess column A or column B there, Mark.
Yeah.
And Ohio State just has to be able to shut down. I mean, the last 2 games, Michigan has 8 rushing touchdowns against Ohio State. Granted, one of them had 6 and has rushed for, I think, a combined 549 yards, if I remember correctly, averaging like 38, 39 carries a game with clock rules. You know, we're not talking about them as much now as we were earlier in the season, but if they do that, that means that they're, you know, A, they're not getting away from their game plan, which means they're probably winning, and B, they're keeping Ohio State's offense on the sideline, and Michigan, while it has put the ball on the ground 9 times, only has lost 2 fumbles. So, you know, I don't really like Ohio State's chances of stripping the ball if Michigan gets things going in the running game. So Ohio State has to do everything it can to try and limit that Michigan running game, you know, whatever that may mean for Roman Wilson and for Colston Loveland and guys like that.
And Kevin, you usually bring up the winner of the rushing yardage battle has won, 21 straight?
Something like that. I'm still in the process of writing Tale of the Tape. That's how much I love this show. I was in a groove. I was writing, and I'm like, oh, I got to get on the Rogers show. So I have to get back to that as soon as we are done.
Well, Kevin, we appreciate it. And as soon as we read this super chat, we will let everyone know what they can find Kevin and everyone else. We got Mike 3883. Appreciate you. I'm tired of the Wolverines comparing Illinois last year to this Maryland game. Illinois last year had a great defense. This year, both teams sucked. Okay. Duly noted, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, Maryland is Maryland, and it did its usual thing of where it plays pretty well to start the season and then goes into a bit of a November nosedive. I mean, of course, that was different a couple years ago when Ohio State went there the week before playing Michigan and had to escape with its life in a 52-51 overtime thriller. But yeah, Maryland went through a lot of the season being like the number 4 team in the Big Ten, and now nobody is necessarily talking like that after the Terps have fallen completely off the table and into a hole next to the table.
All right, Kevin, what do you have working this week?
Tale the Tape. Hope to be running that on Thanksgiving, which means I would really like to get it done in the next hour and a half, which might lead to a 2 p.m. Big Me kickoff live show. Have not necessarily firmed that time up. If I'm still working on writing it, then maybe we go at 3, but I would like to do an hour today at some point just to get the temperature of fans and say hello to all of my haters while we're at it. And you can, of course, find me at Twitter at Kevin_Noon and at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And a quick promotional note, if you enjoy sports wagering, or even if you don't, be sure to sign up for Buckeye Huddle, sign up for the WagerWire app, and have a chance to win a free Ohio State jersey from our friends at WagerWire. Let me know if you have any questions.
Nice. Tony.
Yeah, as soon as we get done here, I'm going to drop the latest episode of Buckeye Weekly Podcast, which is us taking some listener questions and also mainly talking about Kyle McCord versus JJ McCarthy, who will be more impactful in this game, who needs to be more impactful, what to expect. And we'll be dropping new shows like every 12 hours at this point. And, I'll be writing about JJ McCarthy and Kyle McCord at some point today or tomorrow, and also the latest what I know, what I think, what I wonder about this game entirely. And the next either today or tomorrow, something like that.
Steve.
I had to unmute myself there. Excuse me. I am working right now on my annual look at the history of this rivalry. Just so many great games. This is the 119th time they've played, and the 5th time they've played as unbeaten and untied opponents, 2nd year in a row. And we'll have that up on Bucknuts here very shortly. Then game data, where I'll go through all the facts and figures surrounding this year's game and preview and prediction. My picks for the big weekend. What a lame rivalry weekend. Only 2 games matching ranked opponents, this game and the Oregon State game. So basically every other rivalry game is going to be a walkover. Georgia over Georgia Tech, Alabama over Auburn, probably, so many other ones, Florida State over Florida, although Florida State lost their quarterback. And the committee, not so generously on the basis of that, put Washington ahead of them, although Washington has 4 wins that I think are very good. Oregon State, and 2 others, Arizona maybe, whereas Florida State's only quality win is LSU. So I think that's on merit that Washington is ahead of Florida State. And so my picks, I might write a column on Friday if I find the time, if I can con our little friend Patrick Murphy into driving to Michigan and I can work in the car. Maybe I'll write a column about what this game really means. What does this all mean? Does anybody really know what time it is? All that's deep stuff. So that's all we got going on. And of course, we'll be all over the game on Saturday, all the upshot of it. And, get ready for the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl after that. So there you go.
Okay. Strike up some Chicago. All right. Biggs Mike sending us off here. Enjoy all the talk. Let's enjoy the game. Go Blue. Wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. I usually try to pre-read these comments.
Happy Thanksgiving, Mike, but I hope Saturday sucks. I bring this up every year. I spoke to the Cincinnati Alumni Club. They did a joint thing with the Michigan Alumni Club to raise money. And I spoke to them and I said, hey, if you're here for Ohio State, I got 2 words for you. Go Bucks. I said, if you're here for Michigan, I got 2 words for you. Go Bucks. So there you go.
Mike Ford is delivering the analytical comparison that means the most, I think. Michigan is 5-2 in the common opponent comp. So Michigan State 49-zip, 38-3. That's certainly a deciding factor, I'm sure. And the Minnesota score and the Purdue score. And yeah. Okay. All right. Tony, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Steve, thank you so much for all that you do. Kevin, thanks for breaking up your flow there to join us here, of course, each and every week. And people have requested us to do like nonstop Ohio State, Michigan coverage all week, and I've done about the best I can. So we'll be back at 2:00 Eastern time with Zach Smith and Best Damn Media. So that'll be over on the main channel, and Nebraska Live at 4, and on and on and on. So we will see you soon, folks. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, like the song says, next Wednesday, they're going to win the game or we're going to know the reason why. So there you go.